Sometimes it's the little things that really get to us as collectors. Small victories, little parts that make up a satisfying whole, like clearing a saved search from your eBay profile. For as many years as I've been aware of its existence, Mauler has been a saved eBay search for me, and it has languished there pretty much ever since. It's not hard to see why, because when you click on said saved search, you're not greeted with very encouraging signs. Gutted shells with broken bogey wheel mounts, toys with considerable issues like non-functioning motors going for easily what you would expect to pay for a near-mint specimen. Parts and parts and parts and parts. The tedium of making up a complete set that way is something I'll never be hip to. I can't imagine it being terribly economical either, if all you're forced to resort to is eBay. So the Mauler has remained in my very short list of saved searches for over a decade, I'm sure. Why is this tank so desirable? Why is it such a Herculean task to complete? Well, to answer that, perhaps we need to take a closer look at the vehicle pool it shares a year with. 1985. To a guy born literally the year before, 1985 is a myth, a legend. I drove vehicles were pulverizers and battlecopters. The notion of a motorized tank that arrived in its box literally exploded out into 50 individual parts seemed like pure fantasy. But 1985 was the year when Hasbro took something as simple as a road bike and a sidecar and turned it into a model kit whose complexity at that size and price point I don't think will ever be surpassed. But in that same year came a more deluxe toy whose complexity is lost on the casual observer. But I know better. I've pored over the blueprints, fantasizing about this toy long before I ever owned one. If you received this incredible tank as a child, my word, you were in for something of a rite of passage. The bogey wheels were each two parts that needed to be married before mounted to the tank. The tracks needed to be looped and a metal pin inserted while slipping them over the wheels. The turret alone had a 5-piece construction into which a further 4 accessory pieces were added as dressing. But to someone trying to complete his toy decades later, that dressing would go on to cause more than its fair share of frustration. Don't start me on the debacle that is Heavy Metal's Mike. I made peace with myself a long time ago that I would never own that mythical brown worm creature. I'm okay with that. Imperfection builds character, and besides, I managed to make a simple hack out of a piece of brown wire. And on the topic of heavy metal, my word, is he just as difficult to track down as the beloved tank he calls home? Wow, 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 wow. I happen to find this rather beat up one for a price that I was willing to pay. And that's something that I'm always going to be happy with. Beaters are always far more inviting to play with. And he is one damn fine sculpted figure. Is that not the best looking sculpted revolver sidearm you've ever seen? The oily face detail must be remarked upon because it's very authentic once again. Like this guy's been hit in the face by tank emissions all week long. He's been out in the field. He hasn't even been able to splash his face. Yeah, a lot of thought went into this figure, and it is perhaps the finest G.I. Joe tank driver figurine. Everything looks as it should, and he is very, very authentic as someone who would be in the Armor Corps. Dig that leather bomber jacket. Yep, everything about heavy metal is awesome. I can't fault this figure. Getting back to the tank though, my word, is it magnificent. Is it magnificent because of the challenge it presents? No. This has always been a magnificent piece. Its challenge only magnifies the magnificence of it. Whew. Sculpting. Sculpting. A tank can be very simply done. It can be just as successful with a turning turret, tank treads, and an otherwise smoothed off appearance. But the heroes working on vehicle design and sculpts back in the day had other plans. There are 2 removable engine panels that expose the behemoth that is this thing's Lycoming turbine engine. There are sutures and vents and fuel ports and it wasn't necessary to include the diamond pattern on the underside of the engine cover, but the sculptors did it anyway. Wow. This thing has removable mud flaps and side skirts, so you can reenact servicing the tank if you were so inclined as a kid. The included tow cable is a holdover from the Wolverine, and it's perhaps a little too thoughtful, but nice to know that this tank could be used as a mule to tow not only towable weapons, but other vehicles too. So many details picked out in the blueprints as having some or other realistic sounding function. To a child, this level of suspension of disbelief was mind-blowing. And to me, in the cynical age where modern toys are presented as nothing more than toys with some or other gimmick designed to get you to simply buy more toys, a toy so wholly wrapped up in its own mythology is still mind-blowing. An enduring strength of G.I. Joe toys is finding real-world precedent for their designs. We all know the M1 Abrams tank went on to be the United States' long-serving frontline main battle tank towards the end of the 1980s and into the now. But back in 1985, this prototype had a fair shot at mass production. Hasbro designers took its angular, low-profile design and ran with it, increasing the cannon size from 75mm to 105mm, and the weight from just over 20 tons to just shy of 60 tons. She was reset from a light tank into a substantial war machine. The turret has an excellent range of motion with a full 360-degree rotation. You're going to have to remove the extra bogey wheel, however. And the turret is not ratcheted, but friction will generally hold it in place if you don't bump it. The elevation on the turret is incredible, and make the Mauler an impressive artillery piece, as well as a battle tank. Presumably the Mauler is crewed by 3, with an auto-loading cannon of 75 rounds of various ammunition. Driver and gunner to sit in the body of the tank, and commander to sit in the turret. Of course, you're going to have to use your imagination when it comes to the commander's position. You cannot place a figure in the turret cupola. And since you can't place a figure up there, the Mauler lacks a very important feature, a mounted machine gun. But thoughtfully, it does possess about 200 degrees worth of vision through what the blueprints call rifle ports, but they do seem a little cramped to imagine anything larger than a submachine gun being effectively wielded up there. I prefer to imagine them as periscopes. And that way your pretend tank commander can pretend to survey the battlefield while buttoned up. And this vehicle is not completely without secondary weapons. The blueprints will lead you to believe that these grenade dispensers can be loaded with anti-personnel grenades. Aiming them may present a challenge, however, but it is nice to know that left and right both share the same mold. Phew, that's one less unique piece you need to track down. But the challenge of battlefield visibility is met with a wave of G.I. Joe's science fiction wand, as the Mauler possesses what the blueprints call a holographic image display targeting system, which is sci-fi speak for saying that this tank can probably seek and locate targets in all weather conditions and even in complete darkness, without risking its crew, I'm sure. I learned everything I know about weapon systems from G.I. Joe toys and Larry Hama. What definitely is a strength about this tank when you consider typical G.I. Joe and Cobra designs is that the Mauler can hold a driver and a gunner in completely enclosed positions with an armored hatch that can completely seal them in. So who drives? Who guns? Who commands? The age-old G.I. Joe debate rages. Well, if you're lucky enough to have this dirty bugger, Mike or no Mike, he's gotta be behind the wheel, no doubt in my mind. But who shoots the gun? Many years ago, my buddy Rob bought a Thunder action figure and no slugger. Inexplicable, I know. I guess he kind of liked the figure's look. But an artilleryman with no artillery is a crime that needs to be put right. So he lends his considerable skill to manning our gun. But who calls the shots then? Who tells Heavy Metal where to drive and Thunder where to shoot? Well, as much as I love the Wolverine, it is an artillery weapon, not a tank. For crying out loud, give our premier lady tanker a real tank to command. Yes, boys and girls, the boss of this beast is none other than CoverGirl, the most sublime figure to transition to figment of imagination. She's in there. You can't see her, but she's in there, tough as nails and pushing this engine of destruction to its limits. And hey, would you look at that? When I bought this thing at the last JoeCon, I had no idea there was a blue M16 in one of the hatches.
fires and light the fires.
Moving up now, man.
Enemy jeep stationary at 1 o'clock.
Gunner right, HEG.
Heat up. Target identified.
Fire! Target, ceasefire.
That stirred him up. Fast moving target at 11 o'clock.
Gunner left.
Identified.
Fire! Got enemy armor dug in. Low Sabo.
Sabo up. Target identified.
Fire! Holoscans got incoming unfriendly aircraft.
Shoot. Do we try and evade?
He'd nail us the second we moved out of cover. No, we fight it out or die trying. Load RAP.
Wrap up.
Stay frosty, boys. He hasn't found us yet. We're taking the first shot and it has to be perfect.
There he is, 1 o'clock high.
Identified.
Fire!
Got him. Man, I think I need a change of underwear.
You can keep that hatch buttoned up heavy metal, thank you very much.
Before we go, the motorized feature must be addressed. During the filming of The Road to Chocon Part 3, and then again in this video, the motor cogs disengaged. Too much resistance, like hitting this rock, will do it. On my specimen at least. And I must say, while the gearing system is a fascinating piece of simple yet effective mechanical engineering, part of the fun of G.I. Joe toys for me was pushing them around yourself. So after opening her up, again, I opted to leave the motor box out of it for now. The tank is much lighter, and now I can finally push it around on the carpet to my heart's content. Or toss it in the pool if I so wish. Which is not advisable because the axles are still metal and will most likely rust, so yeah, ignore that last piece of G.I. Joburg advice. In the final analysis, is this still part of my holy grail? Well, with or without the motor, absolutely. I highly recommend this toy to any G.I. Joe collector. It's the kind of toy whose complexity is often masked by its simplicity on the surface. There is a reason why these things are hard to complete, and it's the kind of rite of passage that every G.I. Joe collector should go through in order to finally appreciate the beauty of what they hold in their hands. I'm in the Mauler Club, and proud of it. Are you?